Okay, so I feel that it's important to talk about what happened with the Avowed game because, well, it came out, and I knew it was going to be shit before it came out. A lot of people knew it was going to be shit before it came out. Then the game came out. Turns out, hey, it was shit. But it wasn't. I didn't think it was going to be as bad as it actually was. But the game itself has a litany of people, especially on Steam, praising it as okay, which again is not good because this is a game coming from Obsidian, a known. This isn't like their first time at making a video game. This is a company that has been doing it for years, and then they made Avowed, and it's garbage. Yet people are saying it's okay, giving it terrible reviews and criticizing the hell out of it, but still giving it an okay, which I believe is essentially the crux of what it is that I want to talk about. There is a problem with gamers essentially understanding that their voice matters, or being able to identify that the mindset of going, if you don't like the game, just don't play it, does not work because you are a consumer. And so that's the conversation that a lot of gamers essentially try to avoid or ignore in the grand scheme of everything going on within gaming. It is perfectly fine to voice your opinion on a video game and let it be known exactly why you don't like the video game. That's perfectly fine. If the rhetoric essentially starts to deteriorate into other nonsense, you should be smart enough to understand it's like, all right, I'm listening to somebody that's essentially crazy, racist, ridiculous, whatever. You can sift through that. But that's a part of any conversation. Shit like that always happens. A lot of people deviate from the original goal of the original concept and they move on to whatever they want to. That happens. Get over it. But that doesn't change the fact that the core issue about what it is you're talking about still remains. Doesn't matter if the rhetoric essentially flies off the rails or people start talking in tangents and whatnot. That doesn't change anything. What matters is the fact that this has a reason to be criticized and looked upon in a negative aspect, especially when this is something that is supposed to be presented to people that are willing and want to purchase what it is that you're trying to make. And if you're trying to make something that generally off the bat people tell you, I'm not going to buy this, you are fucking up. You have a problem. You are doing bad. And ergo, when the product is then released and it is bad and people then state that it's bad, that is what needs to that's what needs to change within video games, if essentially, because you shouldn't be making bad products. the mindset behind, if you don't like the game, don't play it, should only be applied if video games themselves were made with quality content. We don't have that now. What we have is a ridiculous catalog of games that are coming out with a ridiculous list of checkboxes that they're trying to make or they're trying to hit, rather than actually making a quality game. So because of that, when it gets criticized, or when people do sit there and talk about Avowed the way that they did, and they go into the game the way how they did, and they use like all the bugs, all the ridiculousness and stuff like that, this is coming from a group of people who have made AAA games before, who have been a part of a bigger company before, who have worked on this game for supposedly years. The game came out 2 years after Baldur's Gate 3 won Game of the Year. So why would your RPG following something like that be terrible? If you were making it and with so much more resources available, but one of the main things that essentially a lot of people even brought up or came to their attention, much like I did in my video, which was the fact that in the menu screen for your character stats, you can see pronouns. And there was a lot of people that was like, why are you harping on this? It's not that big of a deal. The game itself it's still like, if it's playable and whatnot, this shouldn't be a big deal. That is very true. I cannot deny that mindset is true, but that only applies if the game itself was a quality game. See, the understanding of them putting that stuff in the bio comes with the understanding that this is only done to virtue signal. But that doesn't mean that it's done at the behest of the gaming community wanting that. It's just for virtue signal. Recognizing that, identifying that, and then calling it out for that bullshit, perfectly fine. But also understanding that a majority of the games, in fact, almost every game that has came into existence with the idea of virtue signaling and hitting checkboxes have not been good quality games. They have been buggy, they have been fucked up, they have been messed up, they have been ridiculous, they have been bland stories, they have forgettable characters, all of that stuff. Because the virtue signaling is what's important. The quality of the game is nothing to these people, because all they want to do is get their message across, burn the house down, and then dip out to the next door. And they're going to do the same thing over and over and over again. And as long as what the gaming, I was about to say media, but what the gaming community that creates the games are currently doing, then the idea behind saying if you don't like it, don't play it, cannot exist right now. Because what we have is essentially rats inside the house. So just being all humanitarian doesn't really work, because this is an infestation. Fuck, the bitch that fucked up Dragon Age, a beloved series of mine, I said she got fired. Because yeah, of course she did. But released a statement saying, I'm leaving BioWare to go make games in RPGs like I want to. Why would you leave BioWare if you still want to make video games? If you were so good at what you did, why are you leaving? But only to then find out later the bitch got another job working for a subsidiary company under Wizards of the Coast. The motherfuckers that do Magic the Gathering? Like, how the fuck do you comprehend that? How does that make sense within the grand scheme of what the community of the developers is actually going through? This is someone that basically spearheaded a popular and basically money-making IP and fucked it over for no reason other than their own ridiculous hubris. So it would be retarded for me to basically walk into a video game and see or understand, it's like, hey, this is gonna have they, thems and pronouns and a bunch of gay virtue signaling, a bunch of gay characters and whatnot. And I assume that the quality of the game is going to be top notch, but the subject matter in the game might not be something I like. No, we're not at that point in time within gaming. What we're at is that if the subject matter is this bullshit, then the quality of the game is gonna be bullshit, because those people who care about those subject matters aren't making games for gamers. They're making games to virtue signal. Case in point, a whole game that's entire design was up and down meant to virtue signal and be this ridiculous rhetoric that essentially no gamer wanted to commit to was the Dustborn game. And that game did terrible. But that was literally the game that they would have wanted if, like, for everyone that's a virtue signal person, or for all of that modern audience bullshit, that is the game that should have been the hot commodity. No one cared. No one cared about the game. That game got made. It actually, in terms of what it is that they did for being able to play it, it was fine. It wasn't buggy or nothing, but it wasn't a game anyone wanted to play. And right there was essentially that case in point. It's like, you are perfect. Like, everyone who criticized and talked about the ridiculous subject matter that was going on in that game were completely justified, because of the fact that that stuff has it's a repetition. It's this cycle of this shit popping up and happening in video games that essentially determine that this game is going to suck. You could sit there and talk about the early editions of Dragon Age, essentially Dragon Age Inquisition having its gay characters and gay storylines and whatnot. You can talk about that. But at the same time, because I've mentioned it before, Dragon Age Origins had gay concepts and characters within it. But it wasn't a problem with that. And same thing within Inquisition. It wasn't scrutinized or looked down upon because it did that. But when that happened, those were just parts of a game that was a good quality game. Those were just different parts in it. You could like it or dislike it. You could take it or leave it. You didn't have to be gay. You could choose your character to do those things. Same thing with the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 fiasco. It's a choice concept. It's something you can choose to do determining on your play style. but that has no bearing on the overall game itself in being something that you would consider woke or virtue signaling or DEI or anything like that. No, it was just subject matter that was in there. And so, again, it just came with that pretense of just take it or leave it. So if that was the case back then, why is it that now, if you mention that a game has this shit in it, a lot of people essentially fly off the handle, hell, me included. But it's because it's pattern recognition. I understand that it's like, if this game has this shit attached to it, it's probably not going to do good. And then it's like, and then you go, and then from that pattern of just that initial identity of being instilled within it, was like, hey, with Avowed, you got yourself a they, them pronouns thing that you have to have in your character bio that is there constantly whenever you go into the menu. And it's like, well, look at what happened with Starfield. You had to pick your pronoun, but it was something that didn't matter or no one cared about in the game. You couldn't skip it or anything like that, but it was tossed into the game and it didn't make any sense that they did that. Well, they did the same thing for Avowed, but now with an Avowed, it's just in your face and you're going to see it constantly no matter what you do. But the pattern recognition, you look deeper into the game and it's like, well, let's take, what else is there? And it was like, well, with Avowed, you basically had a director that was a woman, I believe, that essentially was like, I want to do a whole bunch of crazy gay shit. So it was like, hey, you can pick as many rainbow mushrooms that you want and stick them on your face and dye your hair whatever color that you want. And then it's like, all right, but is your game a good game? I was like, what the fuck does that got to do with anything? What it matters is that I want gay shit inside my game. That's it. And so with that understanding is like that's kind of the core aspect of the whole pattern recognition thing, is that you understand is like, hey, if they're going to take this inch, they're definitely going to take this mile. And so by addressing that and giving and pointing it out and talking about it, you are then taking away what it is that they believe they have, which is unlimited power. They believe that they can just make whatever and then it'll just make money. The powers that be that control these bastards for some reason don't understand that they don't know what the fuck they're doing, and they're constantly not listening to the gamers tell them this is not what they want. But you do have a voice in the matter of essentially voting with your wallet. We've seen what has taken place when gamers essentially come together under an ideal that, hey, this is some bullshit and it needs to change. It happened with Helldivers. Did they get screwed over at the end? Of course they did. But still, it happened with Helldivers. You've seen the popularity of Marvel Rivals, and essentially that's all the revenue that Marvel Rivals made should have went to Overwatch 2. But Overwatch 2 wasn't even scrutinized for DEI or gay bullshit. It was just a bad quality game. So you see how that correlates to where it's like the actual issue is that these people aren't making good games, and they for damn sure need to be crucified for it, because that's what we're spending money on. So I do not believe that it is okay to go, if you don't like it, don't play it. No. You have every right to talk about it. You have every right to dismiss it. You have every right to understand and recognize that if it includes this bullshit, it's probably going to include some other bullshit, and it's probably just going to get worse and worse and worse, because they always do. But when they don't, when they actually are good quality, when they actually seem like they're fun, or it looks like there's something that people want to enjoy or play, hell, that it just happens to even look good, it tends to do very well. Right now, there's a free-to-play beta of that damn Gundam's knockoff that looks fun as hell to play, and I want to play that game. Crimson Desert seems like it's going to be an amazing game. I'm going to get a 5 just so I can play that game. I really want to play that. And they had a PlayStation showcase recently that basically had a bunch of games in it that looked fun, and actually I wanted to play, and they were very appealing. Not attractive, they were appealing. They looked like a good game and I would have a good time playing it and spending my money on it. But then afterwards they showed some Borderlands shit, and then it was like the next showcase is just all gonna be on Borderlands. And it was the most boring aspect of the showcase. You see what I mean when it's like they don't get it? These people aren't aware why they're stupid. But they for damn sure are stupid. And so it is okay to call them out on it. Yeah, you can sift through the hate, you can sift through the race baiting, you can sift through the gender hating and whatnot. That happens. That happens, and it's like whatever. But it's the at this point in time, it's the equivalent of hearing trash talk online when you play an online multiplayer game. It's par for the course. It's supposed to happen. But you should be intelligent enough to sift through that to understand exactly what is the main core problem that you have on your hands that is essentially integral towards fixing gaming as a whole. And so I said, like, again, I just have to say it is perfectly fine to just dismiss people who are essentially going, if you don't like the game, just don't play it. No, dismiss those people, because it's like, no, you're not helping gaming get better. You're just ignoring the literal problems that it has currently in order for you to justify the fact that you just play games. It's like, if you just play games and you don't really care what goes on with it, all right, fine, whatever. But there's other people out there who want the quality of games as well as the content within gaming to justify the amount of money that they're spending on said game. So, yeah. I mean, hell, we're getting to a point where essentially Grand Theft Auto is most definitely gonna cost $100 when it comes out, which is gonna be ridiculous, because if, as a whole, the developers and within the gaming sphere start to charge that much for their video games, they're not gonna understand the fact that Grand Theft Auto would be one of the few games that's actually worth that price, considering the legacy of Grand Theft Auto and what it is that 6 is supposed to present and what people expect from it. Wow, if you just have a bunch of people going, no, we can charge $100, then you're going to get essentially a skull and bone situation where the motherfuckers charge $70 for a barely functioning game that essentially was less enjoyable than it being the little side aspect of the game that essentially inspired that game in the first place, which was Assassin's Creed Black Flag. And that game came out fucking 15 years before Skull and Bones? And Skull and Bones didn't even have swashbuckling in it. And now Yakuza made a pirate game that people enjoy and love, and it got crazy fight animations, takedowns and shit like that, and people are loving it. And then it's like, how? And it's like, if that voice wasn't being heard, and after all those years with Skull and Bones, people being like, I want to play a pirate game, would Yakuza even have attempted to do that if people weren't like, yo, yeah, Skull and Bones gonna be shit, look at what they're presenting, look at the showcases, look at all that they're giving us in terms of content, this is gonna be shit. Had nothing to do with DI, gay, or nothing, Rainbow Coalition bullshit, none of that. Just looked like a bad game. But if you were under the mindset of, if you don't like it, just don't play it. No, that doesn't work. It does not work. So yeah, take that with you, Will. But supposedly, if you're someone that's into RPGs, don't play Avowed. I guess that's the moral. I think that's the moral. I'm not sure. All right, this has been another episode of Fun with Flame. I've been your host, Danieltheflame. And as always, good people, hope you have fun.